Welcome to the Circuspreneur Podcast, sponsored by StageLink.com, where creativity meets advocacy and the business of circus is reimagined. I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto, world champion acrobat, artist, and unapologetic believer that circus belongs not just on the stage, but at the decision-making table. Joining me in 2026 is someone who knows circus from the inside out, artist, creator, and fellow circus savant, Martin Frenette. Welcome back, Martin.
Thank you. The first of the year. I'm happy to be back.
Well, together, we are asking the real questions. What happens when circus artists step into civic spaces? How does movement become message? And can balancing on our hands help us better balance policy? That is Politically in Circus, folks. It is a series. We're still going with that that title. Martin, how do you feel about it? You feel Politically in Circus continues to exemplify what we're going for here in our little chats?
Of course, because we need to find a politics, because there are politics everywhere in the world, not only in the government houses, but also in circus or in theater. Like, there are politics, and we need to address those, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think these conversations are pertinent to, the times, and, part of the caption I say in the intro too is this isn't just about performing anymore. It's about representation. It's about bringing the story of circus into the rooms where laws are written and futures are shaped, right? So I think more artistic voices, more circus voices could be a valuable thing and is a valuable thing. And our topic for today, well, we have several topics, but we're coining this discussion political U-turns and more. Literally and figuratively, there's a lot of political U-turns happening. There was one that just happened this morning, by way of Greenland, the political U-turn that, our administration is now taking on that. First, they were very gung-ho. We are going to, be coming in and, Greenland will be America, which it is not. And this morning, the discussion was, it's going to be a long process. We're looking at other options. We're not going forward with anything yet. Very big political U-turn. And let's also bring in the fact that there was a big political U-turn for Air Force One the other day. That's why we are using that term, because Air Force One literally had to do a U-turn to make it back. And then now there's all of these key political U-turns for policy. So what do you think, Martin? I mean, Greenland is, they've deployed troops there, on the Danes have at a certain point. Canada was now trying to do exercises. What do you think?
Well, the thing is, even like going back a step, but because you're talking about a U-turn, but it's also what is the situation over there? Because if we go way back, when the U.S. acquired, for instance, Texas or Louisiana, there was like an open discussion. It was a real, I don't want to say like offer, but like it happened legally through a process. And you can't just now make a U-turn on this legal way and say, let's just grab Greenland. No, wait. Like, for each time something or some pod was acquired by the United States or any other nation, there was a legal process to go through. And you can't just say, okay, now U-turn. I feel like having, I'm going to go to I feel like having that code in a store. I'm just going to take it with me. No, like, there's a way. I make a purchase. If purchase is even allowed, I can't take the code off the guy, the cashier,
Yes, exactly. Like, it just doesn't work that way. For anybody out there, I just think that the topic continues to be, I think it's just really insane to imagine that we are just going to be acquiring poor Greenland, who wants to retain their their sovereignty, and they deserve to be able to do that. This is really unprecedented anywhere in the world. Just for folks to think about again, what we did with Hawaii, for example, what we did with acquiring Alaska, even what we might do with having Puerto Rico become a state. There has to be a vote. There has to be an entire referendum. I think that's the word, from the folks of Puerto Rico, even though they are also two dual citizens, right? They're American citizens, and they can vote. in some of the elections currently, but they are still not America. They are still now Puerto Rico, their own state. So, until that happens and until, that entire legal process, like what you were saying, is respected. I mean, I just hope that, things back off and we can let poor Greenland just be on its way.
But it's also I think of what Prime Minister Mark Carney from Canada actually said. One of the best quotes I think of this whole Davos meeting was, either you're at the table or you're on the menu. But if you don't want to be on the menu like Greenland, what do you do? Well, be at the table. So I think in a good way, these summits, like in Davos, where they're all meeting right now, there need to be discussions and there needs to be respectful opposition and an openness to different views. But one person cannot dictate the rules. You're at a table, you each get a set of tools and a set of dish, and you'll have your turn to order. But yeah, be at a table. We all need now to stop whining at the waitress or the chef and just sit at a table and discuss and take actions. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you brought up Davos. For folks that are unfamiliar with Davos, it is underway. It's the Economic Forum. I've actually performed in Davos for TV and done some ice skating shows out there over the years. And Davos is this very high-end ski resort for people that don't know, where Davos is in the world and what it is. But the Economic Forum is very serious. I think another thing to speak about, transitioning from Greenland and the topic of having Greenland having a seat at the table is also the fact that there's not usually a lot of arts representation at Davos. And I think that that's something that we, can look towards changing. People feel that the minds at Davos really set the stage for the next several years of economic development across the world. So there are really big key players there. And I think that it's interesting that not a lot of cultural heritage players or arts players are usually invited or usually there to be involved in those discussions either, let alone, some of the countries it's themselves that are misrepresented or underrepresented at a forum that's, that epic. And there's usually a lot of epic sound bites that come out of Davos every single year, that go viral. And, sometimes we get like the craziest things that come out of that. I think one of the agendas that was set a few years ago was like, you'll own nothing and be happy. Is that what, I think that came from Davos, didn't it?
Think so. Yeah, I think so. It wasn't
Yeah.
what a big. I think yeah, it wasn't the big summit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, they, again, very powerful influences there, but I would like to see eventually more representation from art sectors because we are the creative economy. And I think that, we continuously are undervalued in those spaces. When people are talking about strong economic drivers, we are definitely a part of the fabric of how all of that works together within any GDP, for example.
And Switzerland has a huge history when it comes to circus and theater and opera,
Yeah,
so and ballet. Like I mean, arts. Period.
yeah,
Switzerland. I've toured, and I mean, you've been also to Switzerland.
yeah,
It has a huge cultural life. Many great artists, and I'm talking generations,
yeah,
are
right,
from Switzerland. It's beautiful,
yeah.
and you would think in a summit like this, why isn't there any more art representation? Totally, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the oldest circuses are in Switzerland. You've got Circus Knie, you've got the huge Knie family that needs no introduction, for listeners out there. And I wonder, listeners, if you know at any point in time where circus or the arts has been represented in a big way at Davos, put it in the chat, comment on that because to my knowledge, I have not, and I wasn't able to find anything even while searching, the topic either prior to this episode, but. I mean, maybe the Knies have gone. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe a Knie or two has been at Davos.
Or
And
even
maybe,
the Zurich Ballet is beautiful. It's a wonderful company, and
yeah.
Like, do a few jetés across and then leave the stage. Between two speeches, just go jeté, jeté, jeté. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there has been some performances at Davos that have been, circus based. But other than that, that's also too like not even what we're talking about. We're really talking about again a true seat at the table because just because you have us there performing doesn't mean we were at any of
Ah,
the conversations, making any of the actual deals, or making any of the actual connections and partnerships that stem from being at Davos. So
mhm.
I mean, maybe people can see that as an elevation if you're there performing on the stage, but I think that a stronger voice at at a in a panel or something of that nature would be something that I would be looking for in terms of like adequate representation there. But you never know. So maybe someone has some feedback for us on that. But I think that's a great topic that I haven't heard a lot of at all. Okay, we are moving on. We also were speaking about something that you wanted to settle from our previous episode, Martin. A recap that we did in before the new year, and it was about representation of Black lawmakers, and you misspoke slightly, and so you wanted to clear that up about what you actually meant.
Yeah, I blanked on the word governors. So in the history
As we
of the United
do.
States, it happens, in the history of the United States, I'm not talking the last 20 years, in the history of the country has only had two black governors, not Congress people, as I said, and only 14 senators,
Wow.
which is, again, not 20 years in the whole history of the country. Two governors and 14 senators.
And just to give everyone, again, the perspective of how many senators and how many people in the House of Representatives, there's like over 200 each in
Yes,
each
thank
each
you, thank you.
branch. So if we're saying like, if there's been how many members of Congress, how many senators, 14 total out of the, even within that turnover of over 200 represented in the Senate. I mean, the number is so low. So even when you see people running right now trying to get in the Senate that are a person of color or particularly actually specifically black, like how important and prolific that is because the number is insanely low over the course of the entire history of the United States. Like, you know, I don't know, and also too, yeah, with governors, and one of the governors, I think his name is Wes, from Maryland, and there's rumors out there that he might run for president in
Yeah.
2028. Yeah, and he's doing some really good work from what I understand and what I look at in Maryland. He's got a lot of support. A lot of people like him. I think he's got a very strong military background, if I'm not mistaken. But, we might see like one of the very few black governors end up running for president. And then also, too, we had the two women governors that were just sworn in the other day. I believe it's in New Jersey and maybe in Virginia. That those were historic tickets. They were women, and then they also flipped those. They flipped those states. They flipped those states blue. So a lot happened. With the turnover that is so important and essential. And I was just talking to someone the other day, an advocate about turnover in positions of power and leadership, and they were discussing how they couldn't get a particular bill or policy through for years because it was the same representative in that position, but then they finally left, and the new person in there loved their policy and loved their bill and brought it to the vote and got it passed just like that. And they were like, so, they were like 8 years changed in literally a day. But they were like, that was painstaking to go up against that one person that didn't want to change that. So, again, representation matters. You never know if that, different level of representation could shift things, which I think that, it's important to remember that, especially with so many things coming up in the future. And so now another topic that we were speaking about earlier too, Martin, was the impeachment process, which we were getting some clarity on that. And so, can you say a little bit about your perspective on the impeachment process and then what we ended up coming to and like kind of getting clarity around that? Because you were like, why has the president been impeached before, but still in office? Like, why isn't the impeachment process enough to remove him? But we were talking about how there's two parts to the impeachment process, and that is why he has not been removed previously or even could be removed now, even though they've brought about the articles of impeachment, because people typically think if you've gotten impeached or you have the articles of impeachment, then you're no longer president, like automatically.
Yeah, well, the issue is, and that's why we're talking about like flipping some seats,
Hmm.
unless the Senate and the Congress unanimously decide to impeach and shut the door to a certain person, that person will remain in office, which is why these elections are so important. Because right now, let's be honest, the whole cabinet is behind the president and they're all scared of him. There is no way, even though like the impeachment is saying, oh, he did wrong or that's illegal or whatever they want to say, unless the Senate and the Congress moves forward all together as a whole, he will stay in office.
Yeah, and it can just come down to a couple of votes. So
Mm.
it can come down to a couple of allies. And the reason why this is so important is because I don't think there has been any president, and I could be wrong, that has been impeached this many times. I mean, that is a big deal. If people remember, the last president to be impeached was President Bill Clinton. And that was it's a very big deal to impeach a president. I mean, it's now become somewhat not a big deal. Like, oh, I can just get impeached like 7, 15 times, doesn't matter. And it's like not a big deal, but that was a big deal. And it is a big deal. And it's supposed to be a big deal. But if you don't have the numbers, then, again, that's why the process, I guess, works, right? Because it's supposed to be a two-part system, and there's the checks and balances there to a certain extent, and it's supposed to be obviously like not the easiest process. I mean, in America our process is different. Like we've spoken about this on other episodes, where in some countries it's really easy to like switch out a prime minister or
Yeah.
just get rid of someone. You can just do it like that, but it's not like that in America. The American president, I feel like we're saying, especially if you have control of the House and you have the control of the Senate and you're not able to flip those seats, I mean, you can just continuously stay in power and have some really strong articles of impeachment brought against you. So, I mean, it's, I guess, for better or worse. Everyone, please comment too on, what your perspective is on our impeachment process. Do you think that we need to change that process? Do you think that it's solid? Do you think that, it's a process that we could amend, to maybe make the process easier? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting being able to release different prime ministers and things like that quickly, but maybe there's the other downsides to that, where maybe some people feel like we just didn't getting started with a prime minister and then suddenly they're gone, and have they even had enough time to get their feet wet, and did they really make a mistake that poorly that we should take them out of office now and then we have to kind of start over with somebody new? Does it also make you feel like you're maybe spinning your wheels a little bit if your leadership is constantly in a flux and and is like interchangeable?
And not only that, but obviously now, well, now in 10 months, midterms are coming, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of voices saying, "Oh, people are having buyer's remorse, and yeah, they're seeing another thing, and they don't want him as much anymore." However, his name won't be on the ballot. His name won't be anywhere to be seen. People are voting for the representatives, for the Congress, the Senate, the judges. So even though there seems to be this against the president win at the moment, when midterms come, unless we'll really know he or she is Republican, he and she are seats for this man, it won't make a difference. So um,
Yeah.
we need to be aware of what these elections mean in terms of seats and what does a seat can do and how do all these seats together make a difference because it can only be anti-X or anti-Y. Like the Democrats really need to push forward their platforms, their ideas, need to make other people like want to vote.
Yeah.
So like I don't think you go to the gym to say, "Oh, I don't want to be fat." You go there because I want to be fit. I want to fit in that suit. I want to feel good. Not I don't want to be like. I think anything you start to do with I don't want to do X, but if it's I want to, it's
Mm-hmm.
much better. So now I think we're at a place with the political climate where it needs to be more of I want and that I'm sick of
Right. Right.
to move the votes forward and to make this flip happen.
Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying too, Martin, like so many of these seats, people don't realize. I think sometimes we can be a little bit short-sighted of, oh, the only reason why this particular thing that the executive office wasn't able to get passed is because a federal judge blocked it, because this particular judge blocked it, or this particular judge gave it the okay. So you should look at the decisions, or the decision making of your
Yeah.
particular representatives, and look at their history. How have they been on these particular issues?
Mhm.
Because it may come to your door in your state, or it may be come up in something that you're like, "Oh, I can't believe this is able to happen," and like, how can we stop this from happening? Well, that person in that particular seat has got to be someone who will be inclined to vote no on that particular thing. And if you are voting in someone, or you just don't know who they are, you don't know who's going to be on your ballot, that will become tricky when it comes down to them making very important decisions. And also to remember, everyone, these positions, especially with the judges, some of them, their seats are held for like 8 years.
Life. Yeah.
Yeah, in life. Yeah, the
For
Supreme
life.
Court. Yeah, life. But local judges, they don't come up for reelection
Mhm.
for a very long time. And also too, some of them, many of them are appointed to their positions, and then once they're up for a vote, people don't vote. So they get appointed, and then they just don't have any opposition, and then they stay in that position, and then they stay there for years without having another election, because that's just how it goes. And so then you have someone that maybe isn't going to make certain great decisions for you, but they're going to be there for the next 4 years. And there is not much that you can do about that. And they will retain that power. They don't really, I don't think, get thrown out or impeached or recalled very often in any case. But
Sadly, but yes. Yeah.
yeah.
I like the in any case. Yeah. Like, yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
And so, okay, what are our next topics? Okay, Venezuela. We were speaking about this before we got on the podcast. You had some hilarious things to say, as you usually do, even though nothing about this is funny. We've got to find humor in it all somewhere, folks, because things are at such a, again, unprecedented. I am on many phone calls right now where anyone from any particular background is just like, I've never seen anything like this. And I don't think we've seen anything like what we saw happening in Venezuela. And I wanted to touch on the Nobel Prize regifting. That's another, I think, political U-turn. That you were like, no, I do not wish to discuss that or speak that, but you're getting some really like great anecdotes. And because it's Cirque du Demain right now, and because circus festivals are in full swing, you had some hilarious things to compare the regifting of the Nobel Prize from the Venezuelan activist or advocate, whatever you'd like to call her, to our president.
Nobel Prize winner.
Oh, now you said it. Now you said it. You went ahead and said it. I was trying to, like I usually do, I try to like, maneuver around not saying certain things, but all right, the Nobel
That's
Prize
who she
winner.
is.
That's who she was.
Well, in any case.
Yes, but you were saying, it's not like you can just give something like that away. Just like I can't give away my world championship gold medals to just anyone
No,
and say, now you're a world champion. Or someone at Cirque du Mans can't just say, here, here's this, or somebody from, you know, any of the festivals. Monte Carlo can't say, here's my golden clown. No.
it's I don't think or like Meryl Streep can go to her pharmacist and say, "Here's your Oscar." Because my friend who won a medal at Symbolism a few years ago, I was at her place, and she said, "I can't just go here, Martin. You won at the how many whatever it was festival. That's not how it works. There is a and like we were saying before, as a former gymnast yourself, you know there are times, there are deadlines if you want to be eligible for the Olympics to make the national team. If you want a movie to be eligible for the Oscars, there are time limits, there are dates. In that case, when it comes to Nobel Prize, I think like the cut for the nominations was mid January or something. I don't think he even was in office, or he had been in office for a very short time. So unless you fix the world in 24 hours, you were not qualified. That is for the 2025. There we go.
Yes, that's just not how it works. And I think again, we were discussing this of, you know, looking at things from her perspective, and I can't speak too much from what we know about her, but I believe she was like in exile and terrible
She
things
was, yeah.
happened to her.
Mm.
Terrible things, right? By those that were like forced their way into power in Venezuela and like forced her out. But I don't want to look like we're not taking any kinds of sides, but from her perspective, again, what he did was like a really great thing because I think those were
She
the
felt
things.
oppressed, obviously, by this country. Yeah, well, the political climate at very least.
Yeah, exactly. So, she obviously was, exiled and thrown out, and I'm sure, had threats on her life, as many of those environments have that. In those countries, it's very different and it's very harsh. And so, in a way for her, she was like, "Wow, great, thank you. Yeah, like this is." Like you did me a wonderful, awesome favor. But, obviously breaking laws, international laws, and not getting declarations from our government is like a no-go. So, and I've even been discussing this with people that I know that are in my life that have a military background, and they're like, well, he's sent in the Marines, and he can do that. So there are so many different perspectives that are in that particular situation. We were talking about too, like how perspectives also too can be very different on the ground when you're in a country, right? Like on the outside everyone's like, oh my god, this is like the worst thing. Sometimes on the inside everyone is like, yes. Like maybe we don't like the way that it was done, but we are so happy that it was done. I'm not saying that that's what this is here, whatsoever, or making it seem like the majority of the Venezuelan people are happy that this happened, right? But there are many different perspectives that go into this. And I was also listening to a commentator the other day too that was discussing the fact that, every single time these big things keep happening right now, we're missing other things that are happening that are also important. And to
Yes.
remind everyone to like read through the lines, because all of these sensationalized, occurrences, he's like, there's all these different deals that are happening, like with China, there, he's like, there's just so many different deals that are happening, like openly, not behind the scenes, but nobody's really paying attention to them or speaking about them anymore, because of these things that are happening that are taking up a lot of space. And when to say we're not speaking about the Epstein files anymore, the Epstein files have kind of like disappeared again with these
They're still
conversations.
missing. Yeah.
Yeah, they've never returned. They've never been back. So, that's also, again, where has that gone? Where is Pam Bondi? Where
Missing as well with the files.
taking another trip down, taking another flight. Oh, yeah, yeah, I know, too soon. Um, But when the public discourse around these really important occurrences like goes and dies away, I think we can see how quickly the conversation shifts, and then all of a sudden, weeks and months go by and we haven't discussed the importance of where we are at with that. I think the Clintons were subpoenaed recently to testify. I'm curious of how they're going to do that. I've heard that, they might get up there and plead the fifth as soon as they get, to the table, which is something that they can definitely do. I've experienced that in bigger cases that we had with USA Gymnastics. If people remember, Steve Penny was one of the main perpetrators and enablers from USA Gymnastics, and he sat down and he pled the fifth for every question that he was asked when he had to report to Washington, D.C. And so we got no answers and nothing out of him. And that's your lawful right. Then he was arrested and then released and then signed off. And again, never to be seen again. So you can do a lot of sweetheart deals that will work to your favor. So again, there's a lot of ways around the system, even when you're called and subpoenaed to testify in Washington, D.C. So I'm curious to see how that will play out with the Clintons and what they'll end up doing there. Do you have any thoughts on that, Martin?
Well, the only thing I believe I read in an article last week or so is that the Clintons have already submitted an affidavit, or they
Mm-hmm.
submitted something that is basically the equivalent of going there to testify. So
Mm-hmm.
they've like submitted like a written testimony of like pretty much everything that will come up. At the same time, a subpoena is a very serious thing. It's a legal obligation. So it's yeah, it's a tough place. I mean, we see the whole picture, of course, and someone else would be subpoenaed as well, but it's a tough one, yes.
Yeah, and I also heard too that, they were like everything that they already need to know, they know. They have sorted through these files. They know everything about, the Clintons. There's things, essentially, they're like, they have the, whatever the smoking guns are, they're like, they already have those in the files. And, asking them to appear even beyond the affidavit, they're like, I mean, again, yes, sure, but they have what they need. They have the evidences. They have the evidence, right? That they
It
would need. So,
it
yeah,
does feel like a lot of smoke and mirror to
yeah,
just yeah, let's all look over there while it's happening over here. So it does feel like I don't want to go through the list, but many other things have happened that certain person in the White House did last year that we don't see something, we'll put attention somewhere else. So I think the Clintons being subpoenaed is the same thing here. Like that just divert the attention now.
yeah, of course. Well, there is a few arts updates that I wanted to make in this episode because they're very important. The National Endowment for the Arts will be fully funded. Everyone, that is huge. The National Endowment for Humanities will also be fully funded. So for everyone, it's been almost a year of fighting for a fully funded National Endowment for the Arts in America and the National Endowment for the Humanities in America. Everyone thought they were going to get shut down, but even still, even though they're going to be fully funded, it was a disaster of a year for the arts. But again, a lot of political work went into this behind the scenes. We have been advocating with offices the entire year nonstop, begging them to make sure that they confirm the full funding of the NEA and the full funding of the National Endowment for Humanities. So many different circus arts programs and schools rely on those grants every single year, and so many programs were affected, as we all saw throughout the entire year. But we are fortunate that the NEA and the NEH will survive. So they're not going to be shut down. Much like PBS just did, which is, the public broadcasting network in America. And that's, completely devastating. We all have grown up with that. You got things like Sesame Street from PBS and, just really amazing and beautiful pieces of media from that, and things that supported, free access and education for children, that they got through those programs. That was really important important and essential. So that's another update I want to make. And yeah, do you have any thoughts about that, Martin?
Well, I think it's taking time. And as someone who's been an advocate for so many years, I believe if we are loud enough, long enough, our governments are finally taking notice. And let's invest in I really feel like I've seen here in Germany the last years with new grants for circus appearing more and more. What you mentioned about the US, or like there seems to be a lot of more residencies happening because of cultural government giving to the arts. And I think finally the governments and our leaders are seeing circus and the arts are spreading light, awareness about a country, a region, a language. Yes, as you know, as an artist yourself, we've worked with people from different countries, and I can say now I know a bit of the Brazilian culture because we're Brazilians, about Finnish culture because I've worked with all these Finnish people. So, I won't go to the whole globe, but if you are around a group of people or even a single artist from a country, you get a culture. If government invest in shows, whether it's circus, dance, ballet, music, name it, and that show gets to Edinburgh Fringe Festival or some big stage, the whole country benefits from it. I mean, I don't need to tell you how people can say the word Quebec because of a certain little circus that came out of Montreal. See?
How many bilingual individuals there are now
This
because of
tiny
that
little circus, it
small.
helps.
It spread. It spread. Oh yes, it works. Not you, Duolingo. Not you. No. This one little circus. Well, on that note, folks, I also want to share an update. The Circus Arts Guild of America, our newest, biggest website, will be dropping soon. We've gotten so many asks about this for so long. To have a landing page, that is a website. So we are essentially compiling the last almost 6 years of advocacy effort into this website. It took time, but it will be dropping soon. It's something that everybody can sign up for. And it's a cohesive space to see the work that we're doing on a daily, regular basis, how you can be involved, getting updates. But again, we put out that information through the podcast, through all of our social media networks. It's kind of everywhere. But we have tried to, meet the demand of a website for Saga, which is what we like to call it. And I hope that everyone gets, some good things out of it. And if you have any questions about the website, please, again, just comment in the chat or DM me like you usually do. And again, we are responding to the questions that everyone's always asking us and asking us to put in to motion. And so it has been a labor of love, and shout out to Elena Brocade, who, is, putting a lot of energy and effort into the website. Obviously we all are, but she does a phenomenal job on that side of things. And then, I also wanted to give a shout out to the unionizing conversation that I heard the other day. These are folks that I know locally. And the unionizing conversation continues for the circus arts industry here in Las Vegas, here in Nevada, and across America. We need to unionize the circus, we need to organize the circus, or we need to pass the Circus Workers Act and circus arts policy. But it makes me and brings me joy to see people speaking publicly about organizing and unionizing the circus. We speak about that all the time on the podcast, and we continue to do what we can to support those efforts behind the scenes. If you are looking for support in that way, please DM me, as many people do, and we will connect you with the resources that you need to help you be instrumental in supporting yourself in any way, shape, or form that may show up for you in your environment. But it works, folks. Keep making the conversation go viral. Make these conversations go viral on the podcast. Help me and Martin continue to bring you Politically in Circus series. We love it. He's an awesome resource. He's brilliant. You're brilliant, Martin. Thank you so much for coming on to the Circuspreneur podcast again today. I appreciate you and I love your perspective.
May I just underline the word you said, which is support,
Mm,
because to me it is at the heart of the circus community. I do believe whenever it's like an Instagram post or whatever kind of social media thing, and then people are commenting, "Oh, I know X who could be great," or "Hey, have you seen about?" I do believe, or at a training studio, how someone will pass on the right material, like the right equipment, the tip about, "Oh, go and train with this guy; he will get you." Like it really is, and we've seen, like with, for instance, when Ukraine went, oh, when the war started in Ukraine, 2022, a lot of casting calls all of a sudden was Europeans, and if you're Ukrainian, we'll figure it out.
mhm,
So there, I
mhm.
do believe when it comes to circus, it's all about support. If we're all supporting one another, if we're all educating one another and
Yes,
passing on our knowledge, we're all going to be winners in the end.
yes.
Mhm.
That's perfectly stated. And everyone, please like and subscribe to to the podcast. Please comment on the podcast. It helps us to continue to bring you high level content and information that will support us all in supporting one another. That is the ethos of the podcast, and that is the ethos of, I think, the circus arts, like what you were just saying, Martin. The Circuspreneur podcast is sponsored by StageLink.com and available on StageLink.com. Until next time, everyone, this is season 6 of the Circuspreneur podcast. We are now in
Hmm.
2026, right? I know. Can't believe it myself. We're still going, still kicking, still producing circus content, and with my lovely co host, Martin Frenette. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll be back. See you on the next episode.